Hi there, everybody. I am Lucas Martell, creator of Walkabout Mini Golf.
I'm Don Carson, one of the art directors here at Walkabout.
Yeah, and today we're going to give you a little tour of our newest course, Raptor Cliffs. So we'll just kind of walk you through like always and kind of talk about it as we go. So this was a course that a lot of people have been asking for dinosaurs for a very long time. And we kind of struggled with it a little bit because I think the most obvious way of doing it, if it was just straight dinosaurs, it was just you've got these cool creatures, but just sort of in nature, and it just didn't quite have it felt like it was missing something. The other way of going about it, more like a zoo or something like that, just started to get very Jurassic Park, and we actively wanted to avoid that as much as possible. So do you remember, Don, exactly where this idea of basically kind of creating the family fun dino-themed amusement park, do you remember exactly where that came from?
Yeah, during our design retreats, we struggled with the dinosaur one because we knew we wanted to do it, but we also wanted to know what our sort of take on it might be. And I think we were in Oregon at my studio during one of the retreats. Yep. And once again, dinosaurs came up, and this just landed. I think we were probably just in the right mood. We were talking about the Oregon coast, and this idea that our version of dinosaur encounters would be a roadside attraction, maybe in the 70s, somewhere along the Pacific Coast Highway, and that our dinosaurs would be as big as you would ever imagine them to be, but more like big, friendly dogs, like dinosaurs that are really well fed, so they're super friendly and want to participate in watching you play golf.
Yeah. And I remember we talked, well, I should actually call this out because I think this was one of the very first drawings that you did that sort of showed off that idea, just sort of like the going through the giant redwood stump and seeing the T-Rex sort of looking at you as you come through. So that was, I think, the very first drawing you did.
When we're lucky, if we can come up with a drawing that kind of encapsulates the entire mood of something. I think we did the same thing with Mount Olympus. We came up with the first sketch, so it was like, yep, that's what we want to do. And this sort of mix between the redwood tree you can drive through with this big sort of friendly dinosaur looking at you through it kind of was the touchstone or foundation of the direction we eventually went into.
Yeah. And I remember, too, that the addition of not just the amusement park, but sort of the redwoods and the forest and everything, we were talking a lot about just wanting to have scale and wanting to have a sense of sort of adventure. And it felt like if you didn't have some of these big, giant trees to sort of block your view of the big, giant dinosaurs, you just kind of lost. You didn't have little windows to see stuff, and the course had to become so gigantic in order to sort of kind of hide things. And it was only by creating these giant... adding these giant trees that were able to sort of separate it out into smaller areas and give you little windowed views into different things. So,
yeah, I grew up in San Francisco, and we would take family trips up to the redwoods, and there was a quality that these sort of family-owned roadside attractions, like Trees of Mystery with their giant sculpture of Paul Bunyan and the Blue Ox. Were deep in my childhood memory. I think Henning too had lots of memories about the driving up the coast and going to these rather quaint little roadside attractions. So we really wanted to capture that feeling of pulling off the road and getting to experience something tucked in the redwoods.
Yeah. I remember a couple of the other things that also came up. I'm remembering now. They really show up in night mode, but I remember these particular lights and even the little the whole number stanchions that has a little trash can and pencils with scorecards on them where you stop to get the whole number and make sure you write down your scores and everything. I remember it being just such a big part because many people have also been asking for an actual mini golf course, and I feel like this is probably the first and definitely the purest form that we have done that. It just also happens to have the real dinosaurs in it, but that's actually something that more kind of big picture, it's actually might be interesting to chat about because it's something that we have found and talked about a lot more recently. We often call it the twist or the Walkabout Twist, but it's sort of dinosaurs is cool, redwoods are cool, but sort of that very specific take on something that makes it unique. I don't remember exactly when we started talking about it that way, but it's been kind of part of the DNA of the game for quite a while. It's only been more lately that we have explicitly sort of talked about what are the things that we're combining, or what is that very, very specific, take on this world that we're creating. So it's not just generic dinosaurs, it's not just generic redwoods, it's not just generic mini golf course. But yeah, do you remember when we actually started talking about that more formally, that twist idea?
I don't know. It was within the last year, and I know that it now is part of the constant conversation. And even right now, as we're working on stuff for 2026 and 2027, there's some things we really would love to explore, but we're kind of waiting for that. What is the thing that makes it special, that makes it surprising and unique?
Yeah, we've got a lot of fun, like, places that we would like to explore, subject matter that people are asking for, and we would love to be in there, but it often does take that little, like, something extra, or it's like, again, like this, yeah, a place, but you add the dinosaurs to it, suddenly it's just redwoods would have felt probably a little, didn't have enough there to really make it, to make it land and feel as cool as I feel like it has. So it also let us do some really fun things with the hole designs too, in terms of going more classic mini golf and just a lot more of the, hole designs in general that kind of feel like they would exist on a real mini golf course, maybe a little bit simpler in terms of gameplay. There's still definitely some challenge, and hard mode in particular has some great ones. But I know this is a section of the course also that we had been wanting to do for a while, which is just sort of like this platform treehouse vibe. And then once we added in the Brachiosaur, it only made sense that, oh, well, we've got to get up in the trees so you can see them face to face. And remember, the layout of this course, I think, was largely built around this couple, like these multiple layers where that you start off high and you actually end up going down lower and lower throughout the course, just in order to sort of give you these different vantage points and stack it up along the trees. So,
well, footprint-wise, we try to stay fairly small, but we want a sense of exploration so that you're rediscovering the same place from a lot of vantage points. We've done that in many of our courses, and I think this one's especially effective, where you get to see the same place from several different views. And and the idea too is that as you turn a corner, you get a new vista and a new way to look at something that draws you to that next destination or next hole.
Yeah. Also want to call out the work of a few of the other folks on the team. I know especially Shane and Tad on the modeling side of things. I feel like this is a course that, like, it has really, like, just the look of the trees and everything has really nailed sort of like an aesthetic that I absolutely love, and it definitely feels like it's even more polished, that a lot of the work just keeps getting better and better. And also the lighting that Tony Davidson did. We actually spent a good bit of time on this one kind of like playing around and redoing stuff, just trying to find that perfect angle that the sun can come down and it still hits all of the points that you want it to hit, and you're not trying to fake it too much, but yeah, just trying to make sure that it still feels warm and inviting while also being nestled down in the trees where it needs to feel like there's a lot of shade. And yeah, it took quite a while to find that, but it was, once you see it all come together, it was totally worth all that extra effort that went into it.
Yeah, I think you guys really nailed it.
Yeah.
Really, I can feel the salt air.
Yeah, you can smell it a little bit. This is also one of the things that we've also kind of noticed, but we're also kind of consciously doing more. We're actually trying to make sure we don't go too far, but Zach Alexander also has been starting to do, many of our courses are having a lot more graphics, like right here you got the please do feed the Brachiosaurus for the Brachiosaur feeding station, just like a lot more of these sort of graphics that he has been doing that really adds a lot of flavor to the world. But it seems like every single course that we do now, we keep asking for more and more and more and more, and at some point we're just going to, hopefully we don't break him, but yeah, all of the work that's been going into those just really adds a lot of life to the world, and especially this one being, supposed to feel like a functional amusement park or a functional like family fun center. It really needed all of that marketing art along, just like in universe. So
yeah, I think as we evolve the look that Zach grounds us with his graphics, I think you know you're in a Walkabout course because of the way he's interpreted all the signs and graphics and brochures and billboards and you name it, record covers that populate the world.
Yeah, he has a very specific art style that he uses for a lot of the stuff that kind of holds it together. Yeah. So we are coming up here to hole 8. Yeah, and I remember there was also kind of conversation. In fact, I should have shown it up there because there is a zip line up there. We kind of had this idea that this would be sort of like the most dangerous, like no health and safety regulations. Like OSHA, it's the late 70s. OSHA doesn't really exist yet, maybe. But yeah, the idea that sort of like you've got zip lines, you've got sort of like the Raptor handing out the tube rentals that you could just tube down the gigantic waterfall. All of these sort of like, absolutely ridiculous things that just sort of throw caution to the wind. And, we kind of liked that idea. And I remember we spent a good bit of time just coming up with, like if we're doing the mini golf course, what would all those other things be? So, of course, you got to have the tube rent. You got to have the brochures, the little tchotchkes you can buy. Actually, we didn't. We'll have to, maybe at the end, we'll have to swing into the store because you added a ton of like kind of custom Raptor Cliffs themed products, swag, and I think you even got like the penny pressing machine, and just like we made a huge list of all those things that we would expect to see at a little family-run establishment like this along the Pacific Northwest. So
every course is an opportunity to fulfill the expectations of people. So we really piled on all of our individual memories of a summer trip with the family and the kind of stuff that you would find. Like if you go on the California or Oregon coast, every place has fudge. Yeah. So that was something that absolutely needed to happen in a gift shop, is that there's a dino version of fudge.
Yep. This is also, I think, probably another great example of just sort of like a huge amount of time and effort goes in early on to the layout, and just really sort of trying to craft things so that it winds around in such a way that this tree that blocked your view before is now something that you're actually going into to tee off from. And then even like using the Brachiosaur, like if we're building these, especially this giant Brachiosaur, of course you want to use it twice. You want to have one hole that you put into its mouth and the other hole that you put around the legs. So just that feeling of being able to go underneath him. A lot of time and energy kind of goes into packing all these things sort of as tightly and in the most interesting way possible to kind of give you all those reveals as you get those different views going through the course. So
I think that this is the first course we've done that actually has a hike in it.
Oh, I mean, like a formal hike? Yeah, there's actually a couple of trails that heading at it. Yep. Yep. And speaking of layout, this was actually one of the other big ideas that we had. So Don and Henning both live in Oregon, so we have done several retreats in this sort of Cedar Head, Yachats, Florence area, just because it's not too far away and it's nice to get out of Portland and Eugene, where Don lives. So yeah, we have spent a lot of time just out on hikes doing, there's just that sort of like that landscape that is always around us. So I think that was nice because we had a common language. We really didn't have to do much research in terms of what should be there. It was more just like, oh no, you got to have the bridge, you got to do all that. And and layout wise, we also decided early on that we really needed to just sort of like create a couple of different sort of like biomes or environments. And so yeah, if you're in the redwoods, there was just something about getting down onto more of like the coast and the tide pools and everything that really opened it up and felt it feel more expansive. It also allowed us to do more with the dinosaurs so that you could have a few more, but that didn't feel like they were just like on top of each other. And it was a great way that I don't know that we've done anything quite this way, where we were able to hide a lot of the stuff that's down here. Until you actually hike down, you don't really get much of a view of any of this down there. So it's kind of a new area that reveals itself as you are playing the course. Oh yeah, Don, you want to take that, or do you want me to?
Well, I think you can't go anywhere in the world, including Venice, where you're not going to find graffiti, and so that's certainly true of of the Pacific Northwest, and it just felt like it needed to be there to be authentic. And I believe Zach is a better person to tell us. There's lots and lots of references in it.
Yeah, he spent a little while designing them. I don't even know exactly what some of them are. But yeah, he had a lot of fun. I know he mentioned just doing that and kind of getting to create some street art basically. But yeah, there's also
something.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, something that I just learned is that the sort of trailhead signs that you kind of see when you're in a national park, or you certainly have them here. I hadn't realized that those were also the inspiration for the golf hut in the original Walkabout. That your font choice is based on that.
Yeah, if one like that to me was such a big part of like real mini golf courses, was that a lot of times the signs, at least growing up in the 80s and 90s, it was almost always a pice of wood that they would just take like a Dremel and carve it out, and a lot of times it had that yellow, sort of like that light yellow. So the font that we chose, and even like the colors and everything, were kind of built to evoke that sense of it's just sort of like been Dremeled out and then paint added to it. So intentionally kind of like
rustic,
not overly sophisticated, not overly sort of like processed and everything. So yeah, just a little bit more simple, light. But yeah, that was the original idea. I don't know that anyone has ever really picked up on it without us saying something about it. But I'd be curious if that has somehow made it into the sort of, if people feel anything around that at all. So here we are coming up to our Triceratop rides.
I think a lot of attention went into, always animation isn't a sort of an expensive add to any of these courses, but so much attention went into fulfilling the expectations of scale and movement and weight, so that you felt like you were in the presence of these dinosaurs, more than I think any other of our animations.
Well,
a lot of that's Henning's sort of sensibility too, as to emotion and speed.
Yeah. I know Henning animated the Triceratops. I think Nate Terhune did all of the other dinosaurs. I think he did all of the other ones. Apologies if there was another one that maybe Henning did, but yeah, animation for us has always kind of been, this is definitely the course I think that has the most animations in it, even more than Wallace and Gromit, and at least more that you could see at one time, which definitely took a little bit of some performance work. We've just always, the irony is that we have traditionally, like Mighty Coconut has been an animation studio, and the only downside now is that it seems like just in the game, and I think it's more the type of game that we're doing, like the animations, you get so close to them, so they're so exposed, and they also tend to be really long loops. So like you can't just animate a Triceratops for like 3 seconds for a shot. You've got to animate like a solid minute of footage that you can actually get super, super close to, because it's always these idles, as opposed to a more traditional game that would probably be like little chunks of action. But because they're just, the animation is always hanging out, it's actually a pretty hard thing to do to get enough movement in there that it feels alive, but you also don't see it repeat too much. It just takes a lot of very, very long loops. So, the tide pools I mentioned earlier were definitely one of those other core memories of Oregon that we had to get in here. I'm glad that we took the time. I think Ryan came through and actually built out the bottoms of these so you can actually see down into them, because that's just a big part of tide pooling.
Yeah, I particularly love this view because I know that when we were in Florence, we even have photographs of you and Henning standing underneath one of these WPA era bridges that go all along the Pacific Northwest Trail.
Yeah, I think that was Hasita Head, which was definitely, walking under the bridge was definitely, this isn't that bridge, but it was definitely a big inspiration for that, how you just kind of walk down, you park at the top side, have to like walk underneath the bridge to get out to the beach area. I
think this bridge is from Big Sur, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, kind of loosely based on one of the Northern California ones. So coming up here, we've got our Ankylosaur. One of the other things that is also a bit of a talent is that as we start to get more of these animated characters that are affecting gameplay, that always takes a massive amount of work. So it's something that we were always kind of cautious, but we did feel like on this one in particular, you kind of had to do the thing that if there was a real, mini golf course that was dinosaur themed, they would be using the dinosaurs to play off of. So just the fact that you're putting over the stegosaur, you're sort of bouncing off the ankylosaur's tail, you've got to put into the mouth of the brachiosaur, all that just seemed like we had to try to make some of these dinosaurs more front and center and get them into, something that would happen as part of gameplay. And it was also just a bit of a storytelling thing that we had to think through. Like, I think there was some initial, conversation like, oh, should we actually explain why the dinosaurs are here? Why does this family-run establishment have live dinosaurs? And I think that I'm really glad that I think we got to the point of just don't explain it. Don't waste a huge chunk of the story trying to sort of make it feel real. Just embrace the fantasy and have fun with it, as opposed to trying to get too serious and explain too much stuff, because it just sort of made it really heavy unless it really restricted what we could do with it, I feel like.
Yeah, I think that the most successful environmental designs are ones that leave it way open for interpretation. If knowing some sort of novel worth of information is the only way that you'll enjoy a place, then you've kind of failed in advance.
Yeah, I think the counter to those have been probably the Villain's Lair courses, because those do tend to have a lot more of a story, and there's a character and a theme. But I will also say that those are always the ones that they are really hard to figure out that story and try to convey it simply. And it ends up taking a whole lot of internal work to really get to that. I'll just stick my head out onto the hang gliding launch here. Yeah. But
it's the bigger stories that guide the design, and then we do our best to kind of leave it open for interpretation, but with a much stronger foundation of why are there puppets here, without going into the backstory too much.
Yeah. Leave it open for interpretation, but we still have a strong idea of what is going on and why it is this way, and it creates some internal sort of and internally it feels like, oh yeah, that it feels like there is a larger story behind it.
I get to participate in the front end, and it's so nice to be able to come just enjoy the fruits of the labor of everybody involved in it, and especially these views back up into what was originally a very tight, intimate space into this sort of big open environment.
I'm so jealous because by the time it gets to this stage, this is usually the point where I'm so sick of the course, because it's been just I get the front end and then a whole lot of the back end to really
That's
sort of
right.
yeah,
it's fresh for me.
Yeah. So the hang glider was another one of those just sort of family amusement park, family adventure park. It just felt like that was something that you got to have in there. It's not a rideable thing. In fact, I don't think that we have any hang gliders actually around here. We just kind of have that stanchion where you would be able to take off, or we're sort of implying all that. I will say though that as far as rideables, I think you can ride almost all of the dinosaurs except for the pterodactyls. We actually pulled those out just because it was so uncomfortable to ride those. You can also hop on top of the cars if you want to ride up and down the Pacific Coast Highway for a little bit. I will say that that's definitely a bit of a you got to have your VR legs for that as well, just because going around those tight corner turns, I get a little car sick when I'm on the PCH anyways, let alone in VR. So yeah. But yeah, so here we are at hole 18. And I remember this was something that I think that Henning really fought for, who did a lot of the course design and the gameplay design on this one, is that he really wanted that sense of sort of seeing this, the peak that's out here, and hole 18 just being this kind of the best opportunity you get to go sort of out and stand with the binoculars and everything, and just sort of get a really good look back at where all you've been. yeah, I think it made for a great hole 18 in terms of just sort of feeling like it is a different, very special opportunity because, yeah, you're kind of nestled down in it the whole rest of the course, and this is where you really get that breath of fresh air and get to see everything. So, yeah. Well, Don, anything else you want to add?
Well,
yeah.
the Pacific Coast Highway is dotted with viewpoints that you could easily drive by, but it's a great reward if you pull over and go to Land's End and get a chance to really experience it. And I think this really captures that moment.
Yeah, it absolutely makes me want to go back there. So, yeah. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much for checking out the course, and hopefully we'll see you in game. Take care.